Hey everyone, it's Pastor Ryan for day 15 in our 21 Days to Easter Reading Challenge. Today we're looking at the Gospel of John, chapter 15. This is a famous chapter where Jesus says his final I am statement of the Gospel. I am the true vine. Those who are true disciples of Jesus abide in him. They remain in Jesus, and he abides in them. But he goes on to say that he calls his disciples friends. He says in verse 12, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you." It's really amazing that the God of the universe, manifested in Jesus, would call us friends. There's a song that says, "I am a friend of God." And in the Old Testament, this is a title that was used very rarely. It was used of Abraham, who had walked with God by faith. And indeed, that's how we become friends of God, by faith. But he says this, and this is one of those places we need to be clear. He says, "I don't call you servants, but I call you friends." And we might think, well, then our role, our life as disciples of Jesus is not as servants. Maybe we don't think that's an appropriate title for us. But Jesus adds a very important qualification. He says, "You're not my servant," and here's why: because a servant doesn't know what his master's doing, but I've made known everything to you. And so I think it's fitting that we understand ourselves as disciples as friends of Jesus, as those who are near to him, but also as servants of Jesus. We don't need to forget that we serve him as our Lord. He goes on to say in verse 20, "Remember the word that is said to you, a servant is not greater than his master." And he tells us this to remind us that as followers of Jesus, we should expect to be received by the world the same way that Jesus was. He says, "The world will hate you because it hated me first." Now, sometimes I see Christians doing this thing. They do something silly, they do something bad, and then they get criticism and they say, "Oh, it's just because I'm a Christian." But that's like saying, someone who's a bully, who calls himself a Christian, being criticized for being a bully, receiving a punishment, and they're saying, "Well, the Bible always said I'd be persecuted as a Christian." It's like, no, you're being persecuted for being a bully, not for being a Christian. You're actually doing what's antithetical to the gospel of Jesus Christ. We still are God's servants, and thus we obey God's commands. Thus we seek to make God known to the world, but it's a qualified servanthood, right? Because we're not merely servants, but we're friends of our master. We can know him. We can know his will. We know that he cares about us. And this is part of the good news of the gospel. We just finished a series on 1 Peter 5, verses 6 and 7. "Cast all your anxieties upon God because he cares for you." Indeed, this is a great truth. And we see that in John 13 through 17. We see the heart of Jesus for his disciples as he wants their good. And so I pray that this word has encouraged you today. Feel free to share this with your friends on Facebook, and I'll be back in a few days. We've got special guests on for a couple more days, and then I'll be back later in the week. Have a good day.